What's up guys, my name is Ace, and I finally managed to get some playtime in the brand new DMZ mode. And in today's video, I just wanted to share my first thoughts and impressions of this mode, as well as some constructive feedback and some hopes that I have for the future of this mode, because I do think it's actually quite promising. Before we get into that though, I just wanted to point out this is my extremely early impression. This mode literally just came out a couple days ago. At this point, I don't know all of the ins and outs of the mode. There's actually quite a bit going on with it and a lot of depth that I don't fully even understand at this point, but I do feel I at least put enough time into it now that I can share some early basic impressions. And let's start it off with the good, the things that I'm really liking about DMZ so far. The big thing here is I really like the change of pace and the fact that this is a very chill sort of mode if you want it to be, and you basically just choose your level of risk based on the action that you want to perform in the game. Like right now, if you want to go for the M13B by killing the chemist and doing that, it seems like pretty much everybody is trying to do that right now, since this is the only mode where you can unlock the M13B, and therefore that's going to be a very high risk option that you're taking. But if you just wanted to go in and complete some basic contracts, maybe even just go in on a looting run and just kill a bunch of bots, try to find some higher value loot, and then extract with that, you can actually expect a much more relaxed experience. And that's just so refreshing when it comes to the Call of Duty franchise, because over the past few years, whether you're playing multiplayer or Warzone, it hasn't really felt like a super chill experience most of the time, and instead it feels like it's a much more competitive experience where you always have to be on the top of your game. So I do love the fact that DMZ provides those options for us, so you just choose the level of risk that you want to take. And on a really similar note to that, this seems like the type of mode that would be a great time for just chilling with friends after a hard day of work. Maybe just crack a few beers, you can just relax and play this mode with your friends, even if you guys are nowhere near the same skill level. And that's a huge thing that we lost with Call of Duty over the past several years. Playing in mixed parties where some people are really good at the game, other people are not really good at the game, has been horrible in my experience over the past several years. And as far as I can tell with DMZ so far, this really alleviates that issue. I feel like this is the type of thing I could enjoy with people that are nowhere near the same skill level as me, and we'd all be having fun at the same time. As for the next thing that I was actually pretty impressed to see with DMZ is it seems to have quite a bit of depth with the gameplay. There are a ton of different options for different approaches that you can take, and every run is going to be totally different depending on the goal that you're going for, and they provide you with a lot of different missions and options to complete while you're in a match. So it's not just the same thing every single time where you're always working toward that same objective game after game after game. Instead, you sort of pick your own adventure, and I love that depth that they added to the gameplay itself. Additionally, I've done some very basic XP tests, and this mode seems to be excellent for XP earn rates for not only player XP, but also weapon XP if you're killing a bunch of bots with your weapon and also completing missions with the weapon in your hand. And this may end up being the mode that I use for my chill weapon grinds, where I don't really want to focus up and play like I'm in a tournament. I can just sort of relax and work my way through a gun by taking a more low-risk approach, just farming bots, completing some basic objectives, and then getting out of there. And that's going to wrap it up for the main points on the good things that I'm liking about DMZ so far. And overall, I've got to say, this mode turned out to be better than I expected that it would. I thought they would dumb down the gameplay so much with this that there wouldn't be any depth to the actual gameplay itself, and that just doesn't appear to be the case, and I'm actually quite pleased overall with the gameplay. Having said that though, I don't think the mode is perfect. I mean, it's still in a beta state, so we can expect to see some changes, and I do want to share some of the things that I'm not particularly happy with, and areas where I feel like there's room for improvement. This is that point where you may want to click away if you're somebody that can't handle somebody sharing constructive feedback and criticism for something that you enjoy. But for anybody else that wants to hear my honest feedback and impressions here, let's dive in. The first thing that I'm really not particularly happy with DMZ, and I hope this is just a one-time thing to try to get people to check out DMZ, I really don't like the fact that the only method currently to unlock the M13B is by playing the DMZ mode. Now, I do understand there's a really easy workaround. If you know somebody that has the M13, you can just go into a DMZ match, they can drop it on the ground for you, you pick it up, and then you just extract immediately. You don't have to actually complete the mission. I understand there are easy workarounds to get this, but it's more so the general principle behind this that I don't like. I feel if you're buying a full-price AAA game, you shouldn't have to download or play effectively a different game in order to unlock just the base level content for the game that you paid for. I wouldn't mind if it was just a special cosmetic item, so maybe it's just that one particular blueprint of the M13 that you could only get in DMZ. I'd have zero issue with that. My issue is the fact that you can't even unlock just the base version of the gun without downloading and playing DMZ, even if you have zero interest in playing anything but the game that you actually paid for. Going forward, I'm really hoping they don't follow suit with this, and instead they provide multiple paths for the different versions of the game. So, just like we've seen in recent years, you can unlock every baseline gun by playing either zombies or multiplayer. There's different challenges and different paths that you can take to unlock that, and that's how I feel it should be with the DMZ mode as well. I really like the idea that you can unlock the base version of the gun through DMZ, but I just feel there should also be some method of unlocking it without having to download and play DMZ or Warzone 2. Now again, this may just be a one-time thing with the launch of DMZ just to make sure everybody at least checks it out and knows that it exists, and maybe they'll end up getting hooked on it. I get that, this is a totally different style of mode for the Call of Duty franchise, and you want people to at least try it out. So if it is just a one-time thing, I could at least forgive that, but I just don't want to see this happening going forward. I shouldn't have to play effectively a different game from the game that I paid for in order to unlock just the base version of a new gun to be used in the game that I paid full price for. So that was my first issue with the DMZ mode. The next thing I noticed is I just find DMZ is not super friendly to solo players, and I'd like to see a better option for people that do prefer playing solo. I'm one of those people. I generally don't like talking to other people while I'm playing. I like just going in, doing my own thing. And while that's definitely possible in DMZ, it's not like you can't do that. I just feel that it's not super friendly to solo players. And I don't know if maybe they have plans for bringing a solo mode in the future, or what the deal is there. But honestly, even just one little quality of life feature that would go a long way, in my opinion at least, is if you decide to go in solo and you don't want to fill with a random squad that could potentially be doing things to kind of mess you up and screw you over, if you're playing solo, I feel like the game could give you a free self-revive when you spawn in. I think that's a fair way to balance things out. That way, if you get melted by some bots, for instance, you at least have that one free self-res and you can try again. You're not instantly dead with no option of being revived because you don't have any teammates. But this honestly isn't like a massive complaint of mine. It's just a little thing that I feel like could improve the gameplay experience a bit. After that, let's talk a little bit about the bots in the game. Overall, I actually kind of like the fact that the bots can be pretty dangerous. They can be deadly, especially if you get overwhelmed by a bunch of them. And that does keep things at least somewhat intense in the game. Like, you really do have to be paying attention. You have to be aware of your surroundings, and you have to use cover appropriately, even against just bots and not real players. At the same time, I've noticed some inconsistency where there are times where those bots just have like superhuman abilities. Which of course, I mean, they are bots. But man, sometimes just getting melted out of a vehicle while driving quickly and performing evasive maneuvers, but still just getting insta-melted by a couple bots shooting at you, that can be really frustrating and jarring in a single life mode like this, where it is a high risk mode and you lose everything that you've got on you. And another big thing I noticed is, especially when going for the chemist and trying to get that M13B, it seems like the smoke doesn't exist for the bots. They can see through that smoke and lock onto you and melt you through that with no issue whatsoever, like as if there were no smoke involved. Whereas when you're in the smoke, you can't even see 10 feet in front of you, and they're shooting you from like 50 meters away with laser accuracy, and that's a bit frustrating as well. So I think there's just room for some tuning with the bots. I don't think they're like horribly unbalanced, and I don't want them to be nerfed to the point where you don't even have to think about them, like they're just useless things standing on the map. But yeah, I just think there's a little bit of room for improvement. Next, my biggest concern for DMZ at this point is there doesn't appear to be any sort of economy system outside of the gameplay itself. Like I said, I feel like there's pretty good depth to the gameplay experience, but outside of the gameplay, I feel like this mode does lack a lot of depth. And while it's fun so far in this early honeymoon phase, I'm worried about the long-term replayability of the mode. Like, if I were to become a DMZ player and I just wanted to play DMZ from now on and I'm playing it every single day, what am I really working toward? Like, long term, what am I working toward? What do I have to show for all of the time that I'm putting in? Because currently, you're really just playing for like XP or maybe some unique weapon blueprints that you can get for completing various missions and stuff. But I feel like all the cash that you extract with, for instance, as far as I can tell at least, it just converts into XP and that's the end of it. Like, that's gone. It's not like you're collecting cash in an inventory. And I feel like we're gonna need some form of an economy system where you are building up a stash long term in order to keep that long term replayability with the mode. So with this just being in a beta state, perhaps they do have plans to integrate a proper economy or stash-based system in the future. Like, I know you can go in, you can collect various loot, and there is a little bit of an inventory, but based on what I'm seeing so far with it, it's not going to be nearly enough to keep me hooked with this mode long term. So even something as simple as just a cash reserve, so you build up cash over time, and maybe make this a seasonal thing, so it does get reset every season, but perhaps have different tiers where as you reach different thresholds of cash that you've built up on your account throughout the season, then at the end of the season you get certain rewards like really nice looking blueprints, or maybe even a full-on vault for a weapon platform, for instance, if you really reach a ridiculous amount of cash throughout a season. Something like that would really give a lot more long-term replayability. It gives you something to grind for and really work toward over the course of an entire season, and not really just looking at it on a game-to-game basis, or maybe just trying to get loot for your next run that you're going to be doing, but then if you die that next run, all of that time you spent collecting all that loot in the previous run is essentially wasted. This is the type of thing that I think is really going to determine the long-term success of DMZ, because without it, no matter how good the gameplay experience is, I just don't really see it keeping people hooked long term. Next up, I just have a really minor nitpick with part of the gameplay, and this is some of the inventory management. And more specifically, there are certain items around the map that when you pick them up, I feel there's no reason that they shouldn't be auto-equipping. And then if you want to take them off, then fine, you can do that with inventory management. But I've noticed situations, for instance, where I've got a completely blank lethal and tactical slot, but when I pick up a grenade, for instance, it goes into my backpack instead of directly into my nade slot. Or with a gas mask, for instance, if I don't have a gas mask on and I pick one up off the ground, I feel that should go directly onto my character rather than me having to navigate into my backpack in order to then equip it, because oftentimes you're picking these things up in a stressed situation where you're being shot at by either other operators or even just bots around the map. So that's just one minor piece of feedback that I have to provide when it comes to that. Of course, this isn't a deal breaker by any means, it just doesn't seem to work the way that I would think that it should work. But finally, there's one last downside with the DMZ, and we're especially noticing it right now shortly after the launch. I'm sure this will improve over time. Crashing is particularly punishing when it comes to the DMZ mode compared to any other Call of Duty mode out there, because not only does it suck to just be booted out of a match that you've invested some time into, but with DMZ, you also lose every item that you had in your inventory at the time of that crash. And this is especially frustrating when you spend the time to do a scav run where you're just going to collect gear and then extract with that gear to then be used in the next match where you're actually going to be using that gear to perform missions. It really sucks to crash when you're in that mission run through no fault of your own, and then that entire time that you spent doing that scav run was wasted. That was pointless gameplay time that has now been completely wasted because of a technical issue. Now, I know there probably isn't a really easy solution to this on the technical side of things. From a player's perspective, I would love to just see a reconnect feature where if you do crash or lose connection from a game, as long as you're able to get back into that game and that match is still going on, I feel you should be able to reconnect, and it should just spawn you back in right where you were when you crashed or lost connection with all of the gear that you still had, and then you can just continue from there. I know that's likely way easier said than done from the technical side of things, but that is one aspect of DMZ that can be really frustrating. Crashes are extremely punishing and end up wasting a ton of your gameplay time. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for the main things that stood out to me with my initial impressions with the DMZ mode. Overall, like I said, I'm actually quite impressed with this game mode, especially gameplay-wise. I think they did a really good job with a lot of the gameplay elements and the depth that they provided with the gameplay. However, I do think there's also a lot of room for improvement, and I do have some fears about the long-term replayability of this mode if we don't see some significant changes or additions when it comes to having like an economy-style system. Of course, these are just my thoughts though, and I want to hear what you guys are thinking about DMZ so far in the comment section down below. What are some of the things you're liking about DMZ so far, and what are some things you don't like about DMZ and you'd like to see improved on? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.